So let's talk really quickly about basic structure when it comes to poetry collections. There's chronology, which is usually for someone who has already made it, and like Langston Hughes, the poems are ordered by the date that they were written or the date that they were published, chronology in that way. Then there is topical, which is like, I got a whole bunch of mama poems, I got a whole bunch of work poems, I got a whole bunch of dream interpretations, and they're ordered that way. I will say very quickly that those two, chronology and topical, do not really give us as readers a sense of the relationship among the poems or between poems that are right next to each other. So they have their benefits, but they also have their downfalls. And I also, since you guys are probably writers too, you know when you read a collection, it's gotta, there are, okay, I'm gonna say a thing and then I'm gonna say a thing. When you read a collection where it's organized topically, sometimes it can be really difficult to read because there's so much harping on it, especially if the topic is either boring to you or it is difficult for you. Like if you have some abuse poems, like, geez Louise, please don't put them all together. Just let me get through to the happy before we get back to another abuse poem. But also the same thing with funny. It's like, oh, another funny poem. It kind of hits on one note. It becomes monotone. And like something, like I said, that annoys you, like dream interpretations, which I love and hate, but like, I'm just saying, like, nobody really wants to sit down and hear about your dreams. You better be saying something real. You better be super prolific. And it's hard to be prolific when it comes to dreams, which means if you put them all together, you could just be falling really flat for one of the readers. So topical can work for you as like simple, easy way. And you may like mix some of these structures together, but topical also it will make it more difficult to draw connections between the work poem and the dream interpretation and the abuse poem because they're so far apart, and that could be really, really geniuses. So anyway, let's slide past that. Another way, the third way you'll find poetry collections arranged is lyrically. So a lyrical arrangement is going to be based on essentially they're arranged by shared lines, shared images, shared themes. Like it works almost associatively. So you go through and figure out an associative way of connecting lines, connecting sounds, connecting, I guess form could even fall into that, even though form's not really a lyrical element. But those are the ways that those poems are organized. The fourth is narrative. How does the story start? What happens in the middle of the story? How does the story end? And then there's deliberately non-narrative, which says, I don't care what came first. I'm putting what I want first because this thing will have the impact. And then maybe I'll mix things together and you'll have to decipher what actually happens in this collection. Then the sixth one would be epic. I was about to give you an example, but then it was a fiction example. And so it was Faulkner. Sound and the Fury. In the beginning, the first character, I think his name is Benny, and he's like trying to tell you the story, but because of his developmental limitations, he can't tell you in a linear order. So deliberately non-linear narrative structure can be really powerful because his section is really powerful. Anyway, sixth, epic. An epic poem as a book. Bam. And then finally, number 7 is collage. So it's more focused on the images that you're putting together, creating a picture. I guess images, moods, creating a picture through proximity and juxtaposition, rather than thinking about the sound and the lyric of the thing or the narrative of the thing. It's not really an arc, it's more like an object, a collage is. And so another thing to think about when you're thinking about poetry collections is whether they have sections, and if they do, how are those sections broken up? The sections give breathing space between one idea and another, or one time and another, one point of view and another. Sections can be an indicator of growth. But either way, as you're thinking about the order, you're thinking about how the poems speak to one another, what effect changing order would have on theme, would have on interpretation. How does sectioning alter the theme versus, like, imagine a book that you're reading right now without sections, and would that make the transitions in the poetry more evident or less evident? Or, I mean, are the sections there to just help the reading, or do they also have an interpretive role? I wanted to give another example. Yeah, no, I won't. But either way, especially with the titling, is what I should say in a more general way. The titling themselves can be moments to interpret. So there are sections that are titled, I mean, they're just broken up. There's no word, there's no number. There are sections that are broken by numbers, and then there are sections that are given titles. And I feel like the better titles are titles that are kind of ambiguous that you need to translate. But there are also titles that summarize. I just wonder about the work that they're doing. If this is the mama section, do you need to put mama on top? Is the question that I'm asking. Or do you need to put a quote about mothers? That's the question that I'm asking. I'm sure you guys have many answers to those questions, and it really depends on the work that we're talking about. All that to say, and I'm going to wrap this up really quickly, is that when you're thinking about order, you're thinking about the way the experience is curated for the reader. What do they need to know first or feel first? Who do they need to know first or feel first? What places, what events? Let's see. Who do you need to meet first? What motivations do you need to be aware of first? What obstacles do you need to be aware of first? And then what second? For all those questions, what comes second? For all those questions, what comes third? So you can kind of walk through this giant tableau, each poem being a different tableau that introduces you to a different thing, experience that you need to have next in the work. Or maybe we can think of it as a flip book, where you need to see this thing first in order to see the next thing, in order to understand the third thing. So poetry order, poetry collection order, that's the general introduction, and we'll get into some poetry in another video.